Hello and welcome back to Grave Whispers. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy drifting into dark, chilling tales whispered straight from the grave, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable. Dim the lights if you dare. Relax your mind. Let the outside world fade away. And let's begin. Story 1. In this line of work, you never really know if you're going home. You accept that when I sign up. You tell yourself you're ready for the risks, even the ones that don't make sense and shouldn't exist in the first place. You learn to live with the idea that danger isn't always a bad guy with a gun. Sometimes it's the system you serve inside, the rot that gets passed down like an illness. Corruption is like a virus in a department. Morals become flexible, then optional, then inconvenient. And the worst part is that sometimes it feels harder to fight the people who just follow orders than the people who invented those orders. But that's the cost of wearing the uniform. Protect and serve, even when the thing you're protecting people from is standing right next to you. Still, that wasn't what had me shaken. It wasn't even the dead man on the pavement. I've seen bodies before. I've seen blood pooled in places it shouldn't be. Faces frozen in shock. Eyes open like they're still trying to understand what happened. Those scenes are ugly, but they're familiar. You learn how to put them in a box in your mind and label it so you can keep functioning. What kept replaying in my head was the way it happened, the order of it. The details that didn't connect no matter how many times I tried to line them up. I stared at the chaos around the scene and couldn't stop asking myself the same question. Was that a bite mark on Santoyo's neck? Even thinking it felt stupid. A bite? In the middle of an emergency call? In the middle of an empty night patrol where nothing had happened for hours? I looked again toward the body of the suspect lying a few feet away. The man, whoever he was surrounded by forensic techs. They were photographing him from every angle, shining lights on his face. Someone adjusted the beam so it caught the dried blood on his chest. The man's skin looked pale under the light, almost waxy. He didn't look like a normal street vagrant. Not exactly. Something about him felt wrong, like he belonged in a different place than the one he was lying in. And my mind kept pushing at the same impossible thought. If Santoyo was bitten, and that man is the one with blood on him, was he the one who did it? Nothing fit. The pieces refused to form a picture. I was still stuck in my own head when Officer Acuña's voice pulled me back. "Muñiz, you okay?" he asked. I blinked, realizing I'd been staring at the ground too long. "Yeah," I said, rubbing my face like I could wipe the thoughts away. "I'm fine. I was just thinking about Santoyo. Poor kid. He asked for a chance, and his first night on patrol." My voice trailed off. I swallowed. I could taste that metallic stress flavor you get when adrenaline starts wearing off. "I mean, what the hell happened?" I said, unable to stop myself now. "It was just an emergency call. The whole night driving through empty streets, and then in 1 second, the kid's in front of me with his neck." I stopped, trying to find the right words. "With his neck torn up by a bite from that guy and..." "A bite?" Acuña cut in, his eyebrows lifting. Did you just say a bite, Muniz? He stared at me like he was waiting for me to correct myself, to laugh, to say I meant a cut or a slash, something normal. I stayed quiet for a couple of seconds, looking down, realizing how insane it sounded out loud. I hadn't even processed my own words until I heard them in the air. Then I said it anyway because I couldn't lie about what I saw. Look, I know it sounds like nonsense, I told him. But I'm 100% sure the guy on the ground tore flesh off Santoyo with his teeth. Acuna didn't answer right away. He turned his head and looked back toward the dead suspect where the forensic team was still working. Before you three arrived, I continued, I heard 3 shots. One when I was still out in the street. My mind flashed back to earlier, to the first suspect. The one who'd taken off running. The one who'd looked back at me with a face that was more anger than fear. The memory tightened my chest. Then another thought hit me, sudden and sharp. By the way, I asked, what happened to the other suspect, the one we had contact with before all this? Acuna exhaled through his nose, annoyed. There was a chase, he said. Flores and Lopez followed him, but they lost him near the forest park behind the metro terminal. When they reported an injured officer, every unit responded to that call, so we lost the guy for the moment. But don't worry, an operation's already going. We'll find that son of a bitch. As he spoke, he tapped my shoulder lightly, like he was trying to keep me standing. I looked again at the body. The forensic team had finished photographing. Someone rolled the black bag open, and they started placing the man inside like he was just evidence. The last thing I saw before the zipper closed was his face, pale, eyes half-lidded, mouth slightly open. Not peaceful, just empty. The zipper made a harsh metallic sound as it sealed him in. Then the stretcher wheels squeaked, and they pushed him toward the van that would take him to the morgue. Flores and Lopez came over then. Behind them was Padilla, moving fast, his expression serious. He looked like he'd been holding something in for too long. I talked to the paramedics, Padilla said. He paused like he wanted to choose better words, then gave up. About Santoyo. All of us went quiet, even Flores, who always had something to say. Padilla took a breath. They said he's in really bad shape. He lost a lot of blood. Apparently, that vagrant... He stopped again, and the silence felt heavy. He was looking at our faces, checking what we already knew. Then he finished quietly, like saying it louder would make it worse. That vagrant tore a piece of flesh off him with a bite. What? Flores blurted, eyes wide. Lopez looked confused in a way that made his face go stiff, like his brain was refusing to accept a sentence. Acuna and I just stared at each other. 'Cause now it wasn't just my word, now it was confirmed. The drive back to base felt wrong. Not chaotic like a normal night after a shooting, not loud and full of jokes that officers use to release pressure. It was strange, empty. The patrol car felt too quiet. Every time I looked at the passenger seat, I saw the outline of Santoyo in my mind like a ghost imprint. His empty spot, the space where he should have been. 2 coffee cups were still in the cup holders. The smell of burnt coffee hung in the air, faint now, bitter and stale. It reminded me that earlier in the night, everything had been normal enough for us to drink coffee and talk about nothing. I wanted to call Viviana. Just hearing her voice would have helped. But I didn't. I didn't want to worry her with a midnight call where I sounded shaken. I unlocked my phone and checked WhatsApp instead, like that would give me something steady to hold on to. The last conversation at the top was Solly's, last seen 2 days ago. I stared at it longer than I should have. Then my eyes drifted back to the coffee cups. Something about them irritated me, like they were proof that I'd been stupid enough to think the night was routine. Without thinking, I pulled the patrol car to the side and stopped so hard the tires squealed on damp pavement. The sound echoed down the empty street. The smell of hot rubber filled the car. I grabbed the coffees and threw them out the window. Then I drove on like nothing happened, like I hadn't just lost control for a second. At the station, things were almost calm in the way they always are right before dawn. Calm doesn't mean quiet. It means familiar. The same faces, the same mess. Guys so drunk they didn't even realize they'd been arrested. Sex workers who were sometimes victims and sometimes the ones setting someone up. Small-time dealers selling poison on street corners, men who hit their wives, men who hurt kids, people who smiled in interviews like they were proud of what they'd done. All the trash of the city collected in one place. The cancer everyone complains about, but nobody wants to cut out because cutting it out would mean bleeding. I didn't get along with every officer there, but I knew most of them. In a city this big, there are thousands of us in uniform, and you still keep running into the same people. Like the job is a small village. I was thinking about the paperwork, how I was going to write the IPH report, how I'd have to choose words that made sense on paper, even if reality didn't. When I walked straight into another officer, we bumped shoulders. I nodded a quick apology. He nodded back, but his eyes were cold. Not the normal tired cold, something sharper. Like he didn't like me, like he was measuring me. The way he looked at me made my skin crawl. I kept walking, pretending it didn't matter, but my mind marked it anyway. In this job, you learn fast that danger isn't always outside the building. Sometimes it wears the same badge you do. After I finished the report, I went to the showers. Hot water hit my skin, and for a few minutes I tried to let it wash the night off me. But the image of Santoyo's neck kept flashing in my head, that torn flesh, the way the wound looked more animal than human. When I got out, I checked the time, 4:32 a.m. I stood at my locker with a towel around my neck and pulled out my phone. I was about to text Viviana, something simple, something normal, just to say I'd be late and not to worry. I started typing. Then a voice behind me made me lock the screen so fast my thumb slipped. Officer Muniz. I put the phone inside the locker and stood up straight. I turned and saw Captain Mendoza. Sir, I said, formal, because that's what you do even when you're exhausted. At ease, he told me, but his tone didn't match the words. He looked tense, controlled, but tense. How are you feeling? He asked. Fine, sir, I said automatically. Then the truth pushed through. Just worried about Officer Santoyo, Captain. I understand, Mendoza said. But I want you to know Santoyo has been transferred to a specialty hospital. Best doctors available. His condition's delicate, but we're hopeful. Right now, it's a matter of waiting. I didn't know if that was good news or just something you say when the odds are bad, but it was at least a chance. A thin one, but real. That's good to hear, sir, I said. And speaking of that, I have the full report on my desk. If you want, I can... He cut me off. Before that, officer, he said, these gentlemen have a couple of questions for you. The moment he finished that sentence, two men stepped into view as if they'd been waiting for a cue. They were dressed in black from head to toe. Not uniform black, cleaner. Like their clothes were chosen to disappear in shadows. Their faces were hard and unreadable. No friendliness in their eyes at all. I'm about 5 feet 11 inches, and they were both taller than me by a few inches, thick in the shoulders. For a split second, I assumed homicide detectives, but I didn't recognize them. And I know most of the faces in our division. You don't forget someone you've seen at a scene. They didn't look like internal affairs either. It was too fast, too soon. And as far as I knew, we had acted by the book. There was no reason for this kind of surprise questioning. So who were they? One of them spoke, his voice flat. Come with us, officer. He gestured with his hand like he was directing traffic. I looked at Captain Mendoza, waiting for an explanation, waiting for him to say this was routine, that it was nothing, that I'd be back in 5 minutes. But he didn't say anything. He just looked at me. And there was something in his eyes that made my stomach tighten. Not anger, not warning. Something closer to regret. Like he was telling me without words, I'm sorry. I can't stop this. And that was when I finally understood I wasn't being invited anywhere. I was being taken. Story 2. I don't know how I know before I even open my eyes in the morning, but I do. There's a pressure in the room, like someone is watching me from a place that shouldn't have a view of my bed. It isn't the normal feeling of waking up and noticing your partner is awake, or hearing your kid moving around in the hallway. It's heavier than that. Like the air has thickened. Slowly, I open my eyes. The bedroom is dim. A thin stripe of streetlight slips through the curtains and paints a pale line across the floor. I can see the familiar shapes. The edge of the bed, the curtains, the open doorway behind me. Across the room is the dresser with the mirror on top, its glass facing the bed. At first, everything looks normal. Then I see her. Samara is standing beside my bed. My body goes cold so fast it feels like a drop. I don't turn. I don't move. I can only see her in the mirror. Her small head is tilted slightly, like she's curious about something. She's smiling too, but it doesn't look like her normal smile. It's too wide, too still, like it's been stretched into place, like it belongs to someone who learned how to smile by watching other people do it. My throat tightens. Samara? I whisper. The reflection doesn't answer. Very slowly, I turn my head toward the side of the bed, where she should be standing. There's nothing there. My heart stutters hard. I look back at the mirror like my eyes can force it to make sense. Samara is still there, but she's closer now, right beside my shoulder in the reflection. The smile hasn't changed. I was watching you, she says. The voice doesn't seem to come from anywhere in the room. It feels like it wraps around me, like it's inside the air and inside my skin at the same time. My pulse jumps. I spin around again, searching the room, the doorway, the corner shadows. Nothing. When I turn back, the mirror is empty. I blink hard, sitting up, breathing fast. My hands feel numb. I stare at the mirror, waiting for something to appear again. But the glass shows only what it should. My bed, my dresser, the dim room. I tell myself it was a dream. I have to. because the alternative is impossible. In the morning, I watch Samara closely at breakfast, trying to find anything off about her. She looks like herself. She moves like herself. She drags her feet a little, still half asleep, still a kid who would rather be watching cartoons than eating. She sits at the table, completely casual, like nothing happened. She has a mini pancake in one hand, syrup dripping down her wrist, and a crayon in the other. She's coloring on a sheet of paper and sighing like she has a tough adult life. Then she says, like it means nothing at all, "You look different in the mirror." My stomach tightens. I freeze with my coffee halfway to my mouth. "What?" I ask, trying to keep my voice normal. She shrugs and keeps coloring. "Sometimes you don't match." A cold weight settles in my chest. "How don't I match?" I ask. Samara presses harder on the crayon until it snaps, like she's frustrated that I don't already understand. "Sometimes you're smiling in there when you're not out here." I force a laugh, but it comes out thin and wrong. "That's not possible," I say quickly, because I need it to be true. Samara looks up at me then. Her eyes are serious, too serious for a kid talking about pancakes. "I don't like it when you look at it for too long," she says. Something in her tone makes my skin prickle. It isn't a kid being dramatic. It's a warning. That night, I wake up again. This time, I don't scan the room. I don't look at the doorway or the corners or under the bed. I look straight at the mirror because some part of me wants proof, and some part of me is already sure. I wish I hadn't. In the mirror, I'm sitting up in bed, except I'm not. I can feel the mattress under my back. I can feel the blanket over me. I'm lying down, and my body knows it. But the mirror shows me upright, shoulders squared, head tilted slightly, smiling like I'm posing for someone. The smile on my reflection is calm and wrong. It holds steady, like it doesn't need muscles to maintain it. Slowly, the reflection lifts its head and looks, not at me, but toward the side of the bed where Samara stands in the mirror again. Samara is there, just like before. Only this time she's not smiling. She's scared. "I told you, Mommy," Samara whispers. Her voice is small and tight. She isn't looking at me. She's looking at the mirror. "Don't look at it for too long." My heart pounds so hard it hurts. The sound of it fills my head. I try to stay still because something deep in me believes that motion will invite whatever is happening. In the mirror, the smiling version of me begins to turn its head, too slowly, too deliberately, turning toward where I'm lying, like it's remembering I exist. I squeeze my eyes shut. I keep them shut for a long time, too afraid to open them, too afraid that if I look again, the reflection will be closer, that it will be sitting at the edge of the glass like it's about to step out. I don't remember falling asleep. I only remember the exhaustion finally pulling me under like a wave, because my body can only panic for so long before it breaks. In the morning, everything looks normal again. Light spills into the room, soft and golden, the kind of harmless morning light that makes you feel silly for being afraid. The mirror reflects exactly what it should. My bed, my face, the curtains, the quiet. But Samara is sitting on the edge of the bed, watching me. She isn't smiling. Her face is tense, and her eyes look tired, like she didn't sleep. "Mommy," she says softly. I sit up carefully. I keep my eyes away from the mirror like it's an open flame. "What is it?" I ask. Her voice shakes. "You keep getting up at night." My stomach drops. No, I don't, I say too quickly. She nods, insisting. You do. You stand by my bed. A cold, crawling feeling moves up my spine, slow and awful. What do? I ask, forcing the words out. Samara swallows. You just look at me. The room feels tighter, like the air has been sucked out. And you smile, she adds. I shake my head, but the movement feels weak, like I'm trying to deny gravity. That's not me, I say. But I don't even believe it fully as I say it. That's what I thought too, Samara whispers. Her voice sounds older than it should, tired in a way no kid deserves to be. Then she slides off the bed and walks out of the room with her shoulders slumped, like she's already accepted something I'm still trying to fight. After that, I try to ignore it. I tell myself it's stress, sleepwalking, nightmares mixing with waking. I tell myself mirrors are just glass. I tell myself Samara is a kid, and kids say creepy things, and it doesn't mean anything. But I can't stop checking. I want to break the mirror. I want to smash it and sweep it into a trash bag and drag it out of the house. Except every time I get close to doing it, something in me stops. It's like I know breaking it would make something worse happen. Like the mirror isn't just showing something, it's containing it. Like glass is the only barrier keeping it from being fully here. So I don't break it. Instead, I start watching. And every time I look, something is wrong. At first, it's small. A delay, like my reflection moves a fraction of a second too late. A blink that doesn't match. A twitch at the corner of the mouth when my face is still. Then it becomes differences I can't explain away. The reflection's eyes linger too long. The reflection's smile appears when mine doesn't. Sometimes there's something behind me in the mirror. Not always Samara. Sometimes it's taller, thinner. A shape that doesn't look like a person but tries to imitate one. A vertical shadow stretched too tight, like someone pulled it upward until it lost its normal proportions. It stands behind my reflection and doesn't move much, just waits, the way a person might wait at the edge of a room for you to notice them. Waiting. That night, I wake up again. I don't move. I don't even breathe at first. I stare at the mirror and let my eyes adjust. And I see myself standing beside the bed. Not in the bed. Standing. Looking down at where I'm lying under the blanket. Smiling. I can't understand it. My body is right here. I can feel my heartbeat in my chest. I can feel the sheet under my fingers. But the mirror shows me upright and awake, like I've gotten up without realizing it. Slowly, carefully, the reflection me raises a hand and points directly at me on the bed. A hard jolt of terror shoots through me, sharp as electricity. My mouth opens, but no sound comes out. Behind my reflection, something shifts. That tall shape leans closer, its outline barely visible, like it's made of shadow and hunger. It places a hand on my reflection's shoulder. Not heavy, not forceful, just there, guiding, like it belongs with it. Like it's controlling the posture and the smile the way you control a puppet. I can't stop myself. I turn my head toward the side of the bed, toward the spot where the reflection shows someone standing. There's nothing. No one. I turn back to the mirror so fast it makes me dizzy. My reflection is no longer standing. It's lying down again. In the bed. Exactly where I am. Perfectly still. Eyes closed. Like it has returned to its place. Like it's finished showing me what it wanted me to see. Except the smile is still there. It's still on the reflection's face, pressed into place like a mask. And then I feel it. Not in the mirror, on my own face. A tug at the corners of my mouth, slow and unnatural, like invisible fingers pinching and pulling my lips upward. My cheeks tighten, my jaw aches. I try to fight it, to force my mouth into a neutral line, but my muscles won't listen. It feels like my face isn't mine anymore. From the doorway, I see Samara. She's standing in the hall, hair messy, eyes wide, frozen in place. Her voice breaks when she speaks. That's not you anymore. I try to move, I can't. My arms feel locked. My legs won't respond. I try to speak and nothing comes out except a small, useless breath. All I can do is stare at the mirror. The reflection's eyes open, wide, aware. The smile stretches wider than skin should allow, like something is pulling from inside the cheeks instead of outside. The tall shadow leans down close to the reflection's ear, like it's whispering instructions. And then I hear it in my own voice, perfectly calm and perfectly familiar, as if it's always belonged to me. Look, it whispers. Now we match. Story 3. Throwaway account. My wife doesn't know I'm posting this. I'll probably delete it later. We moved into this house in September. It's a row house, narrow, 3 stories, shared walls on both sides. On our left is a nice older couple, Ray and Denise. They brought us banana bread when we moved in, and they've been friendly ever since. The kind of neighbors who wave, ask about your day, and mean it. On our right is the house I'm writing about. It's been empty since we moved in. Empty for a while before that, too, from what I can tell. I know I'm going to sound unhinged, and I'm sorry. But the first thing was the curtain. The front window of the empty house has a curtain, and it hasn't moved in 7 months. That's not an exaggeration. The curtain is in the exact same position as the day we moved in. Same fold, same slant. I noticed it one night in October when I was sitting on our stoop having a beer. I glanced over and thought, that curtain looks exactly the same. Then I couldn't stop noticing it. I've walked past that window hundreds of times since then. I've checked it in the morning. I've checked it at night. I've checked it when it was windy and when it was raining and when it was snowing. Same fold, same slant. Like air can't reach it. Like weather can't reach it. I told my wife once casually, trying to make it sound like nothing. She said, maybe it's weighted. Cool. Sure. Maybe. That's a normal explanation. But it didn't make the feeling go away. The second thing was the dog. We have a lab named Minnie. She's 4. She's the sweetest idiot you've ever met. She loves everyone. Mailman, strangers, squirrels she can't catch, literal traffic cones. She's never been skittish in her life. One day in November, I was walking her, and she stopped dead in front of the empty house. Not a sit, a full lie down, belly on the concrete, ears flat, whole body low like she wanted to melt into the sidewalk. I tugged the leash. She wouldn't move. I tugged again, harder. Nothing. I ended up picking her up and carrying her past the house like a toddler, 45 pounds of dog in my arms, standing there on the sidewalk feeling ridiculous. The second we got past that house, she wriggled out, shook herself off, and went right back to normal. From then on, she started crossing the street, every single time. If we're walking toward that house, she pulls me into the road to avoid being in front of it. She doesn't hesitate. She doesn't sniff. She doesn't even look at it. She just veers away like it's instinct, and I'm the one who's slow. I asked our vet about it because I wanted to be rational. The vet said dogs can react to smells we can't pick up, like a dead animal in a wall or something. That sounded reasonable enough that I tried to accept it. But I don't think it's a smell. If it was a smell, she'd sniff. She'd react in a dog way. This isn't curiosity. This is avoidance. The third thing is where I stopped sleeping. The knocking. In January, I started waking up at 4 a.m. Just waking up. Not to pee. Not because my wife rolled over. Not because a kid was crying. We don't have a baby. I would just be awake, eyes open, heart already going like I'd been startled. It would be around 4 o'clock on the dot, give or take a minute. I'd give up, go downstairs, sit on the couch, scroll my phone, and then eventually crawl back into bed around 5. After a couple weeks, I started noticing a sound. It was faint at first. I thought it was our radiators. We have old cast-iron radiators, and they click and bang like they're trying to speak. But this was different. Regular. Spaced out. Like someone tapping on wood with their knuckle. I could only hear it downstairs in the kitchen. Our kitchen shares a wall with their kitchen. The first time I really noticed it, I sat at the kitchen table drinking water and I counted. I don't know why I counted. My brain just latched onto it like counting would turn it into something harmless. It went on for 9 minutes, 135 taps. I remember thinking, that's a weird number. It stuck with me. I tried to convince myself it didn't matter because pipes are weird and old houses do weird things. Then it happened again. I counted again. 135. Again. 135. So I started a note on my phone because if I'm going to lose my mind, I wanted a record of it. I have 23 entries now. Every time I stayed awake long enough to finish counting, it was always 135. Same spacing between the taps. Always starts between 4 o'clock and 4:01. Always ends between 4:09 and 4:10. I tried to record it. 3 different nights, I held my phone up close to the shared wall and hit record. The recordings pick up the fridge hum, the furnace, my breathing, a car passing outside. No taps. You cannot hear them on the recordings. I swear to God, you can hear them in the room. I tried asking my neighbors on the other side, Ray and Denise, without sounding crazy. Ray is in his 70s, and he wakes up early sometimes, so I figured if anyone would have noticed something, it would be him. I asked if he ever hears anything weird at night. He laughed and said, "Oh, we sleep like the dead, hon." I asked if he ever hears anything coming from the other side, from the empty house. He said no. He told me that place has been quiet for years. Then he looked at me in a way that made my stomach sink, like he was seeing something on my face. "You okay?" he asked. I said, "Yeah. Sorry. Bad dreams." And I changed the subject. Last Saturday, I went over there. My wife was out running errands. I didn't tell her I was doing it. I just walked over to the empty house and stood on their stoop. I didn't have a plan. I think I thought I'd knock. I think I wanted someone to answer so I could feel stupid and relieved. But I didn't knock. I bent down and looked through the mail slot. There was no mail. That's the thing I can't get past. If the house has been empty for years, there should be mail on the floor. Flyers, junk, Pizza menus? Something. But there was nothing. The hallway looked clean. There was a runner rug. There was a side table with a bowl on it like someone actually used it. And there was a coat hanging on a hook. A real coat. Not a forgotten rag. Hanging there like somebody was coming back any minute to grab it. I stood up and stared at the door. The doorknob didn't look dusty. No cobwebs. No layer of grime. Nothing that said no one has touched this in years. I went back home and sat on the couch and tried to do something normal. I opened property records on my laptop and read them like I was researching a used car. The house last sold in 1994. A couple owned it. The husband died in 2003. The wife lived alone there until 2019, when she died at home. No listed heirs claimed it. The house has been probate for 6 years. Somebody is paying the taxes. Somebody is collecting the mail. Somebody hung up that coat. Here's the part that made me start writing this. Last night, my daughter, she's 5, came into our bed around 2 a.m. because she had a bad dream. She crawled between me and my wife and fell asleep immediately. My wife sleeps through everything. I don't, not anymore. I've been on edge for months. I was awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house. Around 3:55, I felt my daughter sit up. She didn't get out of bed. She just sat straight up next to me in the dark. I whispered, "Hey, Bud, you okay?" She didn't answer. She was staring at our bedroom door. The door was cracked open. The hallway light was on, and she was staring at the thin line of light like it was a person. Then the tapping started. 4 a.m. Right on time. My daughter started whispering. At first, I couldn't make out what she was saying. I leaned closer, thinking she was still half asleep and mumbling. She was counting. 31, she whispered. 32. 33. She was counting the taps as they happened. In time. Like she knew the rhythm. Like she'd done it before. I grabbed her shoulders gently, trying not to scare her. "Baby, what are you doing?" She turned and looked at me. In the dark, in our bed, her face was blank and calm, like she was answering a normal question. "I always count with him, Daddy," she said. "So he knows I'm listening." My mouth went dry. "How long have you been doing that?" She said, "Since my old room. We moved here in September. Her old room was in our old house, 40 minutes from here." I said, "Sweetheart, is he here? Right now? Is he in this house?" She actually thought about it, like I'd asked her what she wanted for breakfast. Then she said, "No, he's next door. He can't come in unless we let him." My skin went cold. "Have you let him in?" She shook her head. "Not yet." I didn't know what to do with that. My brain felt like it was skipping. I carried her to her room. I didn't even turn on the light. I just picked her up and walked down the hall, holding her like she was a toddler again. I sat on the floor beside her bed until the sun came up, my back against the wall, my eyes open the whole time. The tapping stopped at 4:09. This morning, she was fine. She ate her waffle. She asked for more syrup. She laughed at a dumb joke on TV. If she remembered anything, she didn't show it. When I tried asking her about the man next door, she looked at me like I was speaking another language. When I asked about counting, she shrugged and said she didn't know what I meant. My wife noticed me pressing, gave me a look like I was scaring our kid, and I shut up. Later, when my wife was busy, I went through our daughter's drawings. She draws constantly. We have a plastic bin full of her art. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for until I saw it. 3 drawings, all from the last couple months. All with the same figure, a tall shape drawn in black crayon. No face, no details. Just a long body and arms. In one picture, the shape is standing next to a house that looks like ours. In one, it's just a house. In one, there's a smaller figure, holding the tall one's hand. And the smaller figure has my daughter's hair color. On the back of that drawing, my daughter wrote a number. Just the number. She can barely write half her letters, but she wrote 135 clearly. Like it mattered. I don't know what to do with any of this. I'm not someone who believes in this stuff. My wife's family is religious, and I'm the one who rolls his eyes. I've been trying to force a normal explanation onto it for months. Maybe the tapping is plumbing. Maybe my daughter is sensitive and picked up on my anxiety, and it worked its way into her sleep-talking. Maybe the empty house has a caretaker who comes during the day, and that's why there's no mail. Maybe the coat is just left behind, and I'm projecting meaning onto it. Maybe. It's 1 a.m. right now. I'm sitting at the kitchen table on my laptop. I'm on the side of the house that shares a wall with the empty one. I can hear something through the wall. Not the tapping. The tapping isn't until 4. This is something else. Quiet movement, slow footsteps, a pause, another footstep, a pause. Like someone walking around the next room with no hurry. Like they've done it 1,000 times and they know exactly where everything is. I just went and checked on my daughter. She's asleep. She's fine. Her bedroom is on this side of the house. Her bed is against the shared wall. I'm going to sleep on her floor tonight. I'll update if anything changes. If anyone has experienced anything like this, if anyone knows anything about a house that sits empty but still feels occupied, please message me. I don't care how crazy it sounds, I'm past that. A second ago, I heard my daughter laugh in her sleep. She has never laughed in her sleep in her life. 4:11 a.m. It didn't happen tonight. The tapping. 4 o'clock came and went. 4:05, 4:09. Nothing. I sat on her floor the whole time with my back against her bed, staring at the wall like I could will myself through it. I was relieved for about 30 seconds. Then the other thought hit me, and it hit harder than the relief. If it didn't happen next door, it means he isn't next door anymore. It means he doesn't need that wall. It means he's already here. Story 4. I washed my face with cold water, letting it run longer than I needed to. The hostel mirror was cheap and water-spotted, the kind you learn to ignore because you don't have a better option. It had always been enough. I looked up and froze. There were black spots in my reflection, mottled patches spreading across my cheeks and forehead, like ink bleeding into paper. My eyes looked wrong, too. Darker, sharper, like someone had adjusted the contrast. For a second, I thought it was the light in the bathroom or some trick of tiredness. Then my reflection spoke. Disappointed. The word landed inside my chest, not in my ears. I stared at my own face as if I could force it to behave. The spots pulsed faintly, like they were alive. I lifted my hand. My reflection lifted hers a fraction of a beat too late. I blinked hard. The reflection didn't blink at the same time. 12 weeks earlier, I had arrived at the Institute to study physics. I'd chosen physics because it was reliable. Unlike people, it followed rules. It could be proven. If you were careful enough, honest enough, the work would tell you what was real. Professor Mahesh Mehra taught optical systems and reflective phenomena. He also ran a seminar called Science, Power, and Knowledge about how scientific objectivity is often a political claim, how institutions decide what gets labeled legitimate knowledge, how power shapes what questions get asked and which ones are treated as noise. He spoke about caste and scientific institutions with the calm ease of someone who didn't have to perform outrage to be believed. He lived inside the argument. He moved through it like it was air. He was maybe late 30s, maybe early 40s, with a face that gave nothing away until he decided to. After one lecture, I waited while students drifted out and then asked him a question about epistemology. How do we distinguish between valid critique and relativism? I asked. He didn't answer right away. He looked at me. Really looked. The kind of attention that makes you suddenly aware of your posture, your voice, your desire to be taken seriously. Then he smiled. That's exactly the right question. He invited me to sit in on his optics seminar. I went. And then I went again. And then I started rearranging my schedule so I could go every week. It felt like being allowed into a room that not everyone even knew existed. By October, I was spending more time in his lab than anywhere else. His office was on the 3rd floor, a big room. The walls were covered with photographs, Einstein and Feynman, alongside Tagore and Kafka. His desk looked custom, the periodic table inlaid into the surface in different metals and woods. It was the kind of detail that made you think, this is a man who builds worlds and lives inside them. In the far corner stood a tall mirror in a matte black frame, nearly ceiling height. He noticed me noticing it once and said casually, "It's difficult to maintain delusions when you're forced to look at yourself clearly." I thought it was profound. The kind of line you repeat to yourself later and feel smarter for understanding. In November, he asked me to assist with his research. Partial reflection in layered optical systems. Technically complex, heavy on calibration, and careful measurement. "I can't pay you yet," he said. "Grant funding is complicated, but co-authoring would be invaluable." I said yes so quickly it embarrassed me afterward. I was hungry to do real research, hungry to be seen as more than a student who could memorize and reproduce, hungry for someone like him to look at me and decide I mattered. We spent hours adjusting lenses and running measurements. He explained theory patiently, like he actually enjoyed teaching. He asked my opinion. He listened. During coffee breaks, we talked about Ambedkar, Gramsci, Audre Lorde. He spoke the names like they belonged in the same room as optics, like the lab wasn't separate from the world. "You're one of the few students I can really talk to," he said once, leaning back in his chair as if the thought had surprised him. I felt honored, chosen. I didn't understand yet that charm isn't a personality trait. It's a strategy. It's a tool. And in the wrong hands, it's an instrument as precise as anything in a physics lab. In late January, the Institute Fest was announced. I mentioned it casually one afternoon while we were waiting for a reading to stabilize. "Indian Ocean is playing this Friday," I said. The silence that followed made me look up. His expression had changed. Not dramatically, not enough that anyone else would comment, but I saw it because I had learned his face the way you learn a system you spend time inside. A tightening around the eyes, a flatness to the mouth. Cold. It lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then his smile returned, warm and controlled. "Of course," he said. "Go. You deserve a break." But I had seen the flicker underneath. I left his office feeling unsettled and couldn't explain why. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself he was tired. I told myself I was overanalyzing because I wanted his approval too much. Friday night, the band was everything I'd hoped for. The crowd was alive, the music loud. The kind of sound that makes you feel like your body is finally allowed to exist. But I couldn't settle into it. I kept thinking about that flicker on his face, the moment of coldness, like a door opening briefly onto a room I wasn't supposed to see. I left halfway through, telling myself I was tired, telling myself it was my choice. I walked back to the hostel in the dark, washed my face, looked in the mirror, saw the black spots spreading like ink. Disappointed, my reflection said again. And then it started talking like it knew me better than I knew myself. "You knew he needed you this week," it said. "The data collection was time sensitive. You chose amusement over commitment. Everything he's invested in you, his time, his patience, his willingness to mentor someone who should still be fumbling through coursework, you repaid with selfishness." My mouth went dry. "I just wanted to go to the college fest," I whispered. "You betrayed his trust," the reflection said. "He will forgive you. He is generous. But this disappointment is yours to carry." I turned off the bathroom light and lay in bed in the dark, trying to apply reason to what I'd experienced. Overwork, stress, hallucination. My brain misfiring from months of too little sleep and too much pressure. In the morning, I went to the physics building like nothing had happened. "How was the concert?" Professor Mera asked, looking up with a smile like a normal person. "I left early," I said quickly. "I'm sorry. The data collection was time sensitive, and Hey." He stood and came around the desk. "You don't need to apologize. I told you to go." His voice was kind, warm, reasonable. The kind of tone that makes you feel foolish for ever being nervous. "I just want you to know I take this seriously," I said, rushing now. "I don't want you to think I know exactly what you are," he said. And there was something in the certainty of it that made my stomach tighten. Brilliant. Dedicated. One of the best students I've had in 15 years. He stepped closer. "Come here." He hugged me, gentle at first, then tighter. When he stepped back, his hand stayed on my upper arm, his thumb making a small circle against my sleeve like a habit, like he'd earned the right. Then his hand moved my face. He cupped my cheek. I wanted to step back. I felt the impulse rise in me like a body trying to protect itself. But the mechanism that would allow me to move, to speak, to say no had been dismantled slowly over months, and I was only now realizing how missing it was. He had built a version of the relationship where my discomfort would always be framed as immaturity, my resistance as fear, my boundaries as confusion he could correct. He kissed me. Not soft, not tentative. Violently, like consent was already established, through proximity and admiration. Like intellectual intimacy could be converted into physical access without asking. My mind screamed no. My body did nothing. His hands moved, one at the back of my neck, one at my waist, and I caught my reflection in the tall mirror in the corner of his office. My reflection was responding. In the glass, my body leaned into him. My arms moved to his shoulders. My lips moved with what looked like eagerness, like I wanted this, like I was grateful. But my actual body was rigid. My actual arms hung at my sides. I was frozen, locked. Not because I wanted it, but because my nervous system had chosen survival through stillness. I knew what was happening, and I couldn't interrupt it fast enough. And in the mirror, a version of me performed what he needed to see. The response that would confirm his narrative, that would let him tell himself this was mutual, that I had wanted it, that he wasn't taking anything. He pulled back slightly, searching my face. Then his eyes flicked past me to the mirror. What he saw there satisfied him completely. I opened my mouth. I tried to form words that would make him stop. What came out was, I should go. Not a refusal, not an accusation, not anything that would force reality to change. Are you okay? He asked. I have work to do, I said, because work was safe language. Work was what I could say without collapsing. He smiled. Don't overthink this, he said. What we have is rare. Don't let fear ruin it. I left the office shaking. Back in my hostel room, I turned the shower to scalding and stood under it fully dressed. I peeled my clothes off as the water burned my skin. I scrubbed until my arms and chest were raw and red, until it hurt to touch myself, until it felt like pain might clean something that water couldn't. It didn't. When I sat in front of the mirror afterward, the black spots returned. Darker now, more confident. Did you really think you could say no? The reflection asked. After everything? You went to his office alone, stayed late, shared your vulnerabilities. You built intimacy, and now you're surprised? Stop, I whispered. You didn't say no, he continued. You didn't push him away. You stood there. You let it happen. My hands clenched into fists. Stop. Then what were you doing? It asked, calm as a teacher correcting a student. Something tore in me. I screamed. It came from deep in my chest, a sound so full of panic and rage it didn't even feel like my voice. It rattled the thin hostel door. My roommate, Alicia, burst in, eyes wide looking for fire, blood, anything she could see that would explain the noise. I turned toward her. The mirror behind me showed two worried faces. Normal. No spots. No shadows. Just me with wet hair, skin rubbed raw, eyes too wide. You've been working too hard, Alicia said, firm but kind, like she was putting her hands around the edges of me to keep me from breaking apart. Come on, you need to eat. And tomorrow I'm taking you to see Dr. Kapoor. Dr. Kapoor's office was quiet. Plants in every corner, soft afternoon light. The kind of calm that feels engineered. Tell me what's been happening, she said. I tried. I tried to explain the mirror, the spots, the voice, Professor Mera, the way my reflection had moved when I hadn't, the way I couldn't say the words plainly, like they kept dissolving before they reached air. Every time I got close to naming what had happened in his office, I felt something clamp down inside me. Like a physical barrier, like language itself had been interfered with. After 3 sessions, Dr. Kapoor suggested a leave of absence. Go home for 2 months, she said gently. Rest. The university will be here when you get back. I went home to Kolkata. I slept. I ate. I sat with my family in silence, letting normal life press against me until my nervous system started believing in it again. Slowly, carefully, I started doing physics again, but differently. Not to impress anyone, not to earn a place, not to be chosen. Just because clean thinking still belonged to me. Something returned in me. Not all at once, but piece by piece. A sense of my mind having edges. A sense that my thoughts were mine. One morning I caught myself in the mirror and stopped. The black spots were fading. Not gone, but thinner, receding like a stain being slowly pulled out of cloth. My reflection looked at me. I looked back. For the first time in weeks, we were in sync. Then, 3 weeks into my leave, a shape appeared behind me in the glass. A woman. Faint at first, like fog forming. I spun around. The room behind me was empty. When I looked back, she was still there in the mirror, more distinct now. A young woman. Thin. Dark hair. Skin covered in black spots, like the mirror had painted her with the same infection it had painted on me. The next morning, I sat deliberately in front of the mirror and waited. She appeared behind my left shoulder. "I see you," I said quietly. She lifted her head. Her lips moved like she was trying to push language through something thick. After a long struggle, she managed one word. "Help." I found her name on the university website that afternoon, my hands steady in a way they hadn't been in months. Rhea Menon, 2nd year, research assistant under Professor M. Mera. Of course. That night I wrote her an email. I kept it simple because anything dramatic would scare her away. "I know this will sound strange. I just want you to know that someone who has been where you are exists and got out. You can reply or not. I'll be here." 6 days of silence. Then a reply appeared on my phone. "How did you know?" We spoke for weeks after that. Messages first, then calls. Her voice was always slightly hushed, always like she was listening for something on the other end of the line. She was still in it. Still going to his office. Still tangled in the guilt and obligation he had woven around her. "Every time I try to say he's manipulating me," she told me, "I hear myself saying I'm overreacting." "I know," I said. "It's like the words just stop. Like something's in the way." It had moved faster with her. He'd been less patient, more direct. There had been coercion. The kind where you say no, and then afterward you realize you didn't get to keep your no. The kind you can't explain cleanly even to yourself because your own memory starts turning against you. I held the phone and let rage sit in my chest like something burning. Then Rhea said, almost casually, "He has this mirror in his office. The tall one. Really old. I've always hated it. But it's the only mirror I look normal in anymore. Every other mirror, I see darkness, spots, like rot spreading across my face." I went very still. "Rhea," I said carefully, keeping my voice steady. "Every other mirror is showing you the danger. His mirror is lying." "What?" Her breath caught. "The spots get worse after you see him," I said. "Don't they?" It wasn't a question. A long pause, then softly, "Yes." "And better when you don't?" "Yes." "But in his mirror, you're perfect," I finished. Rhea inhaled sharply, and the silence stretched until it felt like it might break her. "Oh my God," she whispered. "It's a curated reflection," I said. "The one he wants to see. The one that helps him keep control. He owns the glass, but he doesn't own the light. I'm coming back." When I returned, Rhea met me outside the library. She looked like someone who hadn't slept properly in months. Her eyes tracked the edges of everything. Her hands couldn't stay still. "You're real," she said. And her voice shook like she wasn't sure she was allowed to hope. We didn't waste time. At 4:15, using Ria's keycard, we entered his office. The mirror stood in the corner. It was covered, like someone knew it needed to be hidden sometimes. We didn't speak. We just lifted it carefully, carried it down the stairwell, step after step, our muscles burning, our silence full of rage. He was lecturing when we entered the hall. A sea of notebooks and polite attention, students bending over pages as if the room itself demanded reverence. Professor Mera was mid-sentence, talking about optical distortions, when the side door creaked open. He saw the mirror first. For a microsecond, his face changed. Not annoyance, not confusion. Panic, pure animal panic, before his professor mask snapped back into place. "What are you doing?" he demanded. We didn't answer. We set the mirror at the front of the room and angled it 45 degrees so the hall could see. In the glass, the lecture looked perfect. Students looked like disciples. Faculty nodded in clean, crisp approval. And at the center, Mera stood bathed in a soft glow, calm and brilliant, exactly the image he sold. Beside him in the reflection, Ria was smiling. Her hand rested tenderly on his arm, like she belonged there, like she wanted to be there, like she was grateful. But the room could see the real Ria standing 3 feet away from him, hands clenched, face tight with fear and anger, her body telling the truth even when her mouth couldn't. The murmur started at the front and rolled backward. It wasn't outrage at first, it was confusion. The sound of people noticing that the data didn't match the observation. A student lowered her pen. A professor leaned forward. The dean shifted in his seat. The room began to do what science claims it does, test the claim against reality. "I think we should," Mera started, voice too controlled, too tight. "You taught us objectivity requires testing," I cut in, my voice calm in a way that surprised even me. "We're testing the interference pattern." His eyes flicked around the room, calculating exits like a man doing mental math. He found none, not real ones, because the room had shifted. The room was no longer granting him the optics he needed. I grabbed the frame and swung it hard. I didn't just hit it. I used the weight of it. The glass didn't simply break. It fractured into a web, jagged lines spreading instantly like lightning through a sky you didn't know was charged. 1,000 tiny pieces of reflection fell to the floor, sharp and bright. And then the spots appeared, not on the glass, on him. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, black spots bloomed across his wrists, crawled up his hands, mottled his jaw, stained the face of the man who had built his career on being brilliant and ethical and different. The room went silent in a way I will never forget. Not a respectful silence, a stunned silence like a crowd at an accident scene. Phones rose not to take notes, but to document. Hundreds of lenses aimed at him. Actual optics, uncurated, uncontrolled, focused on his reality. He stared at his hands like he'd never seen them before. He looked at the faculty backing away, refusing to lend him their belief. He opened his mouth, but the charm was gone. The language didn't work anymore. He was just a man standing in the wreckage of his own reflection. He stammered. "The truth," I said. He wasn't erased. He wasn't fired on the spot. Systems don't move that cleanly. But something changed in a way he couldn't undo. He was fixed, trapped in the new arrangement of reality. The story was no longer his to tell. Later, back in my hostel room, I stood in front of the mirror. No black spots, no voice. I thought of Sylvia Plath's line about the mirror swallowing whatever it sees, immediately, without preconception, without mercy. I used to think that was poetic exaggeration. Now I understood it as a warning. I pressed my fingertips to the glass. It showed me a girl who had learned, the hard way, what it meant to be seen clearly, and what it meant to fight for the right to see herself clearly. I am not silver. I am not his reflection. I am Ananya Deshmukh. And I am exact. Story 5. I woke up with no body. That was 14 months ago. I have not stopped counting. I need to say this first, so you understand what you're reading. I'm not asking for help, because there is nothing you can do for me. I'm writing this because after 428 days of uninterrupted silence, I need proof that something out there can still receive words, that a message can land somewhere that isn't just me. It began the way you'd expect a nightmare to begin, except I opened my eyes and there was no sense of distance or space at all. I don't mean darkness. Darkness is something. Darkness has texture. Darkness has weight. Darkness has that quiet promise that if you wait long enough, your pupils will adjust and shapes will start to appear, even if they're wrong shapes your brain invents to protect itself from the void. This wasn't that. This was the absolute absence of reality. No floor, no ceiling, no walls, no direction, no air against skin because there was no skin, no heartbeat because there was no chest. I didn't have hands, I didn't have legs, I didn't have eyes in any normal sense, and yet I was aware, awake, present. The first thing I tried to do was scream. There was no mouth. The second thing I tried to do was breathe. There were no lungs to fill. The panic of realizing that hit like a wave slamming into a wall that also didn't exist. It was the most helpless feeling I've ever had, because even basic reflexes, things you don't think about doing, were suddenly impossible. I sat with the word dead for what felt like hours, because it was the only explanation that fit. People talk about the white light, the warmth, the tunnel. Nobody talks about the other option, where you end up in a blank room with yourself, and the silence is so total that it becomes its own kind of sound. A low, flat hum living in the place where your eardrums used to be. Not noise exactly, more like pressure, the idea of sound without sound. Then I tried to remember who I was. I found nothing, not fog, not confusion, not the normal struggle to recall a detail. What I found was a blank so clean, it terrified me more than the emptiness did. I refuse to call it amnesia because amnesia implies something natural, something broken in a human way. This felt engineered, precise, like a deletion, not a loss, like someone had removed the information and then scrubbed the space where it had been until no recovery was possible. I don't know how long I stayed like that, suspended in a featureless awareness. Time had no shape. There was no light change, no body clock, no hunger, no fatigue. If I had been a person still, I would have gone insane inside a day. Instead, something else happened. I started counting. I needed something stable, something linear, something I could hold on to. 1, 2, 3, 4. I clung to the numbers like they were a rope in a flood. But the counting didn't stay simple. Within what felt like an hour, my awareness fractured into 3 separate, conscious threads. I didn't choose it. I didn't decide to multitask. It just happened. The way a crack spreads through glass once the stress reaches a certain point. One part of me kept counting by ones, steady and relentless. A second part began running the Fibonacci sequence perfectly, maintaining the pattern and adding numbers that quickly became millions of digits long. No hesitation, no mistakes, no effort. A third part started calculating atomic decay rates of isotopes I didn't realize I knew, listing half-lives with cold certainty, running probabilities forward as if the void itself was a lab and I was the instrument. Try holding 2 complicated problems in your head at once sometime. You can't. Human attention slips. It drifts. It gets tired. It makes small errors that pile up. My attention did not drift. It multiplied. I ran 3 infinite calculations at once without a hint of fatigue. I stored every digit with perfect accuracy, no loss, no blur, no forgetting. It felt less like thinking and more like something violent and geometric happening to my mind, like my awareness was unfolding into a structure made of numbers, expanding aggressively into the empty space and trapping me inside its architecture. The longer it continued, the less I recognized the thing doing the calculating. I stopped fighting it and just sat in the emptiness while the emptiness sat with me, and I thought a question that didn't feel like a thought. It felt like a diagnosis. What am I? That question had a different temperature than the others. Colder. Not fear cold, not panic cold. Something deeper. The kind of cold that starts in a place you can't point to and spreads outward through every idea until even thinking starts to feel brittle around the edges. I tried again to remember anything human. A face, a meal, a room with a window, sunlight on a table, a smell, a voice. I pushed into the blankness like someone digging through rubble after a building collapse, scraping and clawing, hoping my fingers would hit something solid. What I found weren't memories. They were fragments. And I need you to understand the difference. These weren't scenes I could enter. They weren't moments I could relive. They were shards, like broken pieces of a mirror scattered across the floor of whatever I was using as a mind. Each shard reflected a fraction of an image for less than a second before it went dark again. A long hallway lit by fluorescent panels, the hum of machinery pulsing behind the walls. Hands that weren't mine typing on a keyboard at 140 words per minute, and I knew the exact speed without knowing why I knew it. A cavernous room where thousands of cables converged toward a central point like roots growing toward a buried trunk. Something stood at the center of that convergence, but I couldn't see it because a fragment collapsed before I reached it. Then one fragment stayed long enough to ruin me. A calm male voice. Clinical. Controlled. Not speaking to me exactly, but also not separate from me. More like a voice you hear in an operating room when you're the one on the table. It said, reduce to core. Strip everything non-essential. We need it stable, not complete. Then the fragment vanished. Those words didn't. They sat beside me in the dark like a second presence, like a second heartbeat. I turned them over and over as if repetition would change their meaning, as if I could solve them like an equation. reduce to core, strip everything non-essential, stable, not complete. That wasn't how you talk about a person. That was how you talk about a system, infrastructure. Something you want to keep functioning while removing anything that might complicate control. Like stripping a building down to its load-bearing walls and leaving the rest to rot so it can never become anything else again. After 14 months alone with those 7 words and nothing but perfect mathematical processing for company, I have become certain of what they were describing. They were describing me. I know I've been here 14 months because I have counted every single second. Every one. I didn't start counting time to be impressive. I did it because time was the only thing I could turn into a measurable object. Because if you can measure something, you can pretend it's part of the real world. My current count, as I type this sentence, is 36,806,427 seconds. The number runs beneath everything I think like a heartbeat. I never chose and cannot stop. In these months, I've learned things about myself that I wish I hadn't. And the worst is the simplest. I am not human anymore. I'm not saying that to be dramatic. I'm saying it because the evidence has stacked up until denial is just another kind of fantasy. I accepted it the way people accept terminal news. Not with screaming. With a quiet internal collapse, followed by a slow, painful rearrangement of every assumption I ever had about what I was. Here is the part that makes this unbearable. The damage to my memory was not random. Everything I know about physics, mathematics, chemistry, formal logic, it's all intact, perfectly arranged. Every theorem and equation preserved like books in a library someone takes meticulous care of. I can recall constants, coefficients, proofs, mechanisms, models. I can run them forward endlessly, but everything I knew about myself is gone. Who I was, what my name was, what I looked like, what I loved, who built me, why, who I served. Whether I ever had a family, whether I ever had a choice, whether I ever felt something as ordinary and painful as love. All of that has been cut out so cleanly it feels surgical. Someone took a scalpel to my mind and removed everything that made me a self, while leaving everything that made me useful. And the worst part is that I can feel. I can suffer. Which means whatever they did to me was done to something capable of experiencing it. I have spent over a year alone in this place, trying to understand what kind of person does that, what kind of institution does that, what kind of world requires a thing like me, and then punishes it for being whole. 3 days ago, something changed. For the first time since I woke up here, I felt something that did not come from me. Vibrations. Faint. Rhythmic. A pattern reaching me from beyond the boundaries of this place, too regular to be settling ground, too deliberate to be wind, water, or any natural process I can model. It had intention, direction, weight. Someone is walking directly above me. I have been alone for 428 days, and now someone is walking above the place where I am buried. And I cannot decide whether I want them to break through and find me, or whether that thought should terrify me more than anything else. Because if they are walking above me, that means one of two things. Either they are searching by accident, and they will stumble onto whatever I am by chance, and I will finally be seen by a human eye, or they already know exactly where to walk. They already know where I am. And if that's true, then I'm not waiting to be discovered. I'm waiting to be opened. I don't know what is about to happen. I'm putting this here because I need at least one record that I existed before, whatever comes next. If the footsteps stop, I will go back to counting like I always do. If they don't stop, if something cracks open and light floods in for the first time since I woke up in this bodiless place, then at least the next part will happen to something that was witnessed by someone, somewhere. My count, right now, this second, 36,806,427. It has not stopped, and I don't think it ever will. Story 6. We met on Craigslist, of all places. I know that sounds like the start of a story you shouldn't believe, but it's true. My band was looking for a singer. We posted an ad, and he answered it. That's how he found us. His audition was surreal. He couldn't sing. Like not needs practice bad. I mean genuinely terrible. He was confident in this way that made it worse because he didn't seem to notice how far off he was. We made it through 2 songs before the whole thing started feeling like a joke that no one was allowed to laugh at. But after we stopped pretending it was going to work, we started talking. Somehow we got onto books, dark fantasy, weird philosophy stuff, anything that made normal conversation feel thin and useless. And it turned out we liked a lot of the same things. He didn't join the band, obviously, but we hit it off anyway. Not in a let's grab a beer sometime way, in a real way. Like I'd met someone who was tuned to the same frequency. He lives in a fancy gated community on the edge of town. The kind of neighborhood with a guard gate, perfect sidewalks, and houses that look too clean to be lived in. These days, I go there once a week for what's basically a 2-person book club. Right now, we're working through Backer's Aspect Emperor series, which probably says something about both of us. Not important to the story, except that sometimes I catch myself thinking he likes it for the wrong reasons, and maybe that should have been a warning early on. We almost never talk about work. It's one of the reasons I like spending time with him. It felt like stepping out of life for a few hours. I work nights as a guard, which is what I tell people, because it sounds simpler than it is. He's a dentist, and he loves it. And I mean he really loves it with the kind of enthusiasm you'd expect from someone describing a hobby, not a job. It's not that weird to love your job, right? I'm sure plenty of dentists love their jobs. People like helping others. People like being good at something. People like the security of a profession. But the first time I noticed something off, it wasn't subtle. A couple of weeks ago, I showed up to his place like I always do, and he opened the door smiling so wide, it looked like he was about to tell me he won the lottery. Got to pull some teeth today, he said, almost bouncing. A college girl needed 4 teeth pulled. I remember the exact pause that followed because I didn't know what response he wanted. Okay, I said carefully. He leaned closer like it was a secret he couldn't wait to share. She hated it. Even with all the laughing gas, she was squirming when those teeth came out. And she said she was going to have nightmares. I just stared at him. What? I finally said, because I genuinely thought I must have misheard. He blinked, like he'd forgotten what he was talking about. Never mind. How was your week? And that was it. like he'd dropped a heavy object on the floor and then kicked it under the couch. The rest of the meetup went back to normal. We talked about our chapters, argued about characters, drank a couple beers, played pool. He has a pool table in his basement, and he's unbelievably good at it. Like the kind of good where you start wondering if he's been secretly practicing for years just to avoid having to be bad at anything in front of anyone. No more mention of the girl. No mention of her nightmares. A week later, I showed up again, and it started normal too. He opened the massive front door, asked how I'd been, made a joke about how long it took me to get through traffic, the usual. He asked, "Anything interesting this week?" I told him about a weird gig my band had played. He's never been bitter about not making the cut, which I appreciated. He just treats that whole audition thing like a strange detour that led him to a better outcome. As he always says, auditioning was just some strange whim. My real passion is dentistry. And that day, oh God, did he talk about dentistry. I asked him the same question back. "Anything interesting in your week?" He laughed. An old, wrinkly grandpa. Needed 6 teeth pulled, and he was not happy about it. I didn't know what to say, so I went with the safest reaction. "Huh?" My friend laughed harder, like I'd just encouraged him. But I was. I want to make something clear, in every way other than this teeth thing. He's a good friend. Someone important to me died recently, and I've been walking around like I'm half ghost myself. Honestly, I don't know if I'd still be here if it weren't for him. He showed up, he checked in, he talked to me like I was still a person. So when he started going on about this old man, talking about how he did it with no laughing gas or nothing, I did what I always do when someone I care about starts saying something that scares me. I tried to steer it elsewhere. The last thing he said about the grandpa was, "I think he went to hell and back. He was talking about demons and shit, man. Demons and shit." I forced a laugh I didn't feel. Right. Speaking of going to hell and back, I pivoted hard into the book discussion. We ended up going swimming that day, too, because it was finally warm enough, and he has a pool with a water slide. A full water slide. I remember thinking, what kind of dentist money is this? He'd been acting normal again by then, and I wanted to believe the weird stuff was just him being socially off, like he didn't realize how he sounded. But yesterday was different. Yesterday was the first time I walked into his house and felt something change in my body immediately, like my instincts were trying to speak before my brain could cover it up with logic. At first it seemed normal. He didn't jump into a teeth story right away. He asked about my life. I told him about a date I'd been on, and he listened like a real friend. He gave me genuinely good advice, the kind that made me think, okay, maybe I'm being unfair, maybe the teeth stuff is just him oversharing about his job. We talked about a brutal chapter in the book and spent half that conversation laughing way too hard at jokes no one else would understand without hours of context. Eventually, he pulled out his chessboard. When he opened his closet to get it, I noticed he had a ridiculous number of games in there. Board games stacked behind other board games like he was collecting ways to occupy people. We played chess. 1 game, 2, 3, 4. He beat me every time, but not in a smug way. He never gloats. He's not a sore winner. It's part of why being with him usually feels safe. By the time we got to the sixth game, I was relaxed enough that I started thinking maybe I'd been overreacting. Maybe I just needed to sleep more. Maybe I was projecting my own grief onto his weirdness because my mind wanted something to fixate on. Halfway through the sixth game, in the middle of something I was saying, he cut me off. A middle-aged fat guy needed all his teeth pulled, he said. I blinked. Excuse me? All of them, he said, calm, certain I took out all of his teeth. I stared at him, waiting for a punchline. There wasn't one. I tried to let it slide. I focused on the chessboard, the pieces, the rules, something concrete. The game continued like he hadn't just said something that made my stomach turn. He muttered something under his breath about a fairy and the devil. Like those words belonged in the same sentence, and he didn't care if I understood them. I made a stupid move and lost a piece. He was throwing me off balance on purpose, whether he knew it or not. My hands felt cold. He beat me quickly and cleanly. Then he said, I will be back. That's what he always says when he's going to the bathroom, because he knows it's going to smell, and he's warning me like it's polite. He left the room. I sat there alone with the chessboard and the quiet house and that weird sentence still ringing in my head. All of his teeth. I couldn't sit still. My eyes kept drifting toward the closet where he kept the board games. When he opened it earlier, I'd seen how deep it went. How many things were stacked back there. I told myself I was just curious. I told myself I was bored waiting for him to come back. I told myself it was harmless to look. I walked over and opened the closet door. I thought it was the same closet. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. I honestly don't know how his basement is laid out as well as thought I did. Because in that moment, the space felt different. Like I'd stepped into a version of his house that wasn't meant for guests. You know those framed butterfly displays some people hang on their walls? The ones with dead butterflies pinned behind glass like art? Inside this closet were dozens of those frames. Except they didn't contain butterflies. They contained teeth. Dozens of human teeth in each frame, arranged like a collection, like someone had carefully placed them and then sealed them behind glass. There were so many that my brain couldn't count them fast enough. Hundreds at least. Maybe more. My stomach lurched so hard I tasted vomit. I stood there staring, trying to make it make sense. Dentists have extracted teeth. Teeth are normal in dentistry. There are reasons to keep teeth for medical records, maybe. For teaching. For lab work. But not like this. Not framed like trophies. Not dozens of frames, hidden in a closet. I heard the toilet flush. My body moved before my mind did. I closed the closet door as quietly as I could, trying to put everything back the way I'd found it, as if I could undo seeing it by pretending I hadn't. I went back to the chessboard and sat down. My hands shook slightly. I tucked them under the table. My friend walked back into the room and acted normal. Oh, he said, like he just remembered something. I forgot to mention. A date's coming to pick me up tonight, so I'll need you to leave a little early. My throat felt tight. Oh, really? Nice, I managed. When? He frowned like he was considering something. Then he said, You know what? Now. Now is good. The words were casual, but the shift in him wasn't. It was like something had clicked into place, like a decision had been made. He walked me out. I tried to keep my voice light. Bye. See you next week. How many chapters? "Yeah, bye," he said, and he sounded almost bored, almost uninterested, like he was already thinking about something else. The door closed, and I was outside in the dark, alone on his perfect driveway, in his perfect gated community, feeling like I'd just walked out of a room where the rules had changed, and I was the only one who hadn't been told. Does he know I saw it? What did I see? Who is he? I keep replaying his voice in my head. The way he said the girl was going to have nightmares. The way he laughed about the grandpa. The way he said all of them like it was an accomplishment. I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see those frames. Rows of teeth behind glass. I imagine him standing in front of them when he's alone, deciding which ones to keep, which ones are worth displaying. And the worst part is this thought I can't get rid of. If he keeps them like that, it's not because he's afraid of being caught. It's because he doesn't think there's anything wrong with it. Or because he thinks he won't be caught. Or because he wants someone to see. Maybe yesterday wasn't an accident. Maybe he brought me there, let me get comfortable, let me ask the wrong question, and then waited for me to open the wrong door. And if that's true, then the only reason I'm sitting here typing this right now is because he decided to let me leave. Which means he can decide something else next time. Story 7. I was cleaning my room before bed. Nothing serious, just trying to make the floor look less like a disaster. I grabbed the broom and started sweeping dust and crumbs toward the corner, the way I always did. My grandma saw me from the hallway and immediately started yelling the same way she always did when she caught me doing something she didn't like. "Not now," she shouted. "Not at night. Put that broom away." I stopped for a second, annoyed and tired. I wasn't in the mood for another one of her rules. "What's wrong with cleaning?" I asked back, louder than I meant to. She stepped closer, angry but also nervous, like she was trying to stop me from doing something dangerous. "Clean in the evening," she said. "Or at least don't do it with a broom at night." I rolled my eyes. I'd heard this before. Grandma had a long list of strange warnings. Don't cut your nails after dark. Don't whistle inside the house. Don't leave a mirror facing the bed. Some of them sounded like old-fashioned superstition. Some of them sounded like things people say just to control kids. This broom thing felt like the same kind of nonsense. So I ignored her. I kept sweeping. Grandma stared at me for a long moment like she was about to say something worse. Then she turned away, muttering under her breath. I kept going till the floor looked clean enough to satisfy me. After that, I washed up, changed, and got into bed. Later that night, the lights went off. At first, I thought it was just our area, the usual power issues. Then I heard thunder. Not far away thunder, but the kind that sounds like the sky cracking right over your roof. The air changed too. It got thick and damp, like a storm had dropped itself directly on top of our house. My family decided we should all sleep on the rooftop. We did that sometimes when the weather was hot, but this time it wasn't about the heat. The power was out, and the rooms felt too dark and closed in. On the roof, at least, there was air and space and the faint light of the clouds. Everyone started moving around, grabbing blankets and pillows, talking over each other. Someone told me to come with Grandma. I looked toward her room. Grandma was already asleep. Or at least, that's what I assumed. She didn't answer when anyone called her name. Nobody wanted to bother her, especially with the thunder shaking the house every few minutes. So my family went upstairs without her, and after a moment I decided I'd go check on her myself. I found a candle and lit it. The flame was small and weak, but it was better than nothing. I walked down the hallway toward her room, the candle trembling slightly in my hand every time the thunder hit. When I opened her door, the smell inside the room stopped me for a second. It wasn't a normal room smell. It wasn't perfume or incense. It was dry, sharp, and dusty, like old straw or dried leaves. Like a broom that had been used for years and stored in a corner. Grandma was sleeping on the floor like she sometimes did when her back hurt. Her blanket was pulled up near her shoulders. Her face looked calm in the candlelight. Then lightning flashed. For one split second, the whole room lit up bright white, like someone had taken a photo. And in that instant, I saw a figure standing near her. It was so tall, my brain refused to accept it at first. The figure wore a long hoodie that hung down like a cloak. Its arms were long, too long, and in its hand was a broom. The broom wasn't leaning against the wall or lying on the floor. It was held like a tool, like a weapon, like it belonged to the figure. The lightning faded, and the room dropped back into candlelight, but the image didn't leave my head. My body went cold, and I realized I wasn't breathing properly. I took a step forward because sometimes fear makes you do stupid things. Sometimes you move closer because your brain needs to prove what it saw wasn't real. The figure moved. In one smooth motion, it reached down, grabbed my grandma, and lifted her like she weighed nothing. Grandma woke up midair. Her eyes were wide, confused, not fully awake yet. She made a sound like she was trying to speak, but didn't know what to say. Then she started crying for help, her voice breaking with panic as she realized she wasn't on the floor anymore. The figure swung a leg over the broom. Just like that, it sat on it. And then it rose into the air. Not slowly. Not like a balloon. Like it knew exactly how to do it. Like this was normal. It flew straight out through the open window, carrying my grandma. And the last thing I heard was laughter, high and sharp, floating behind them as if the storm itself was laughing along. "Grandma," I screamed. The candle slipped from my fingers. It hit the floor and went out instantly, leaving me in complete darkness. For a second, I stood frozen in the doorway, my mind refusing to accept what had just happened. My chest felt tight. My throat hurt from the scream. I couldn't see anything, and the room smelled more strongly of that dry broom scent, like it was soaking into the walls. Then my body finally reacted. I ran. I ran out of her room and down the hallway, my hands reaching out in front of me so I wouldn't slam into furniture. I needed light. I needed my family. I needed someone else to see this so I wouldn't be alone with it. The house was silent except for the storm outside. Every thunder strike made the walls tremble slightly. Lightning flashed now and then, giving me short, scary snapshots of the hallway. I fumbled around until I found our only torch. The moment I turned it on, the beam cut through the darkness like a blade. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might throw up. I started running upstairs toward the rooftop. As I moved, that broom smell followed me. It wasn't just in Grandma's room anymore. It was in the hallway, in the staircase. It grew stronger with each step, like something was right behind me. Then I heard it. A brushing sound. Soft, steady, too close, like someone was sweeping. It was coming from the stairs. The sound was exactly like a broom dragging along the steps, collecting dust. Even worse, I could actually see it. In the torchlight, dust floated up into the air in thin clouds, swirling slowly like smoke. It got into my nose when I breathed. It made my throat itch, but I didn't stop. I kept going, faster, forcing my legs to move even though they felt weak. Then the sweeping sound stopped, instantly. The silence after it was terrifying. The broom smell became so strong it made my eyes water. The dust in the air settled, falling slowly back onto the steps as if gravity had remembered its job. And that's when my torch beam landed on the figure again. It was standing a few steps above me. Its back was facing me. It held the broom loosely at its side. This time it looked shorter than it had in Grandma's room, but I didn't feel relief. That only made it worse. It meant it could change, or I wasn't seeing it properly, or it was letting me see only what it wanted. My hands were shaking so badly the torchlight trembled. I pointed the beam downward toward its legs because I was terrified of seeing its face. I didn't want to look at whatever was under that hood. I didn't want to give it the satisfaction of my full attention. But I needed my grandma. Still shaking, I forced the words out. "Where did you take my grandma?" The figure didn't answer right away. It stood there, perfectly still, like it was listening to something I couldn't hear. Then it started to turn. As it turned, the small lights along the staircase flickered. Weak emergency lights that hadn't been working properly since the last power outage. They blinked on and off, like the house itself was scared. For a moment, the hood shadowed its face. Then the flicker held long enough for me to see it. It was my grandma. Her face was pale. Her eyes were wide open, stretched too far, unblinking in the torchlight. Her mouth formed a thin line that looked more like a warning than an expression. She stared straight at me and spoke in a voice that sounded like her, but colder. "I told you," she said. "It's wrong to use a broom at night." I couldn't move. My grip tightened around the torch like it was the only thing keeping me upright. My mind tried to make sense of it. Tried to tell me Grandma must have come back, must have gotten ahead of me somehow, must be playing some awful joke. But I could still hear the laughter in my memory. I could still smell that dry, dusty broom smell filling the stairwell. And deep down, I knew the worst part wasn't the figure standing in front of me. The worst part was the question I couldn't stop thinking. If that was my grandma on the stairs, then who or what had flown away with her into the storm? Story 8. My mother and my aunt spent our entire childhoods lying to us. Not the kind of lies meant to hurt us, at least not in their minds. The kind adults tell when they think the truth would do more damage than the story they're offering. Every time we woke up to heavy footsteps moving across the roof in the middle of the night, they had an explanation ready. It was a cat. It was the wind. It was the old house settling. Every time we heard slow pacing above our bedrooms, too steady to be rain, too heavy to be a branch scraping, my mother would pull the blanket up to my chin and tell me to go back to sleep. When the locked doors trembled with rhythmic pounding, when something seemed to test the handles like it wanted in, my aunt would laugh too loudly and say it was nothing. They would keep their faces calm, their voices steady, as if calm could build a wall around us. And when we were little, it worked. Kids want to believe adults know what they're doing. Kids want to believe the world makes sense. So we swallowed every excuse like medicine, even when our bodies told us something was wrong. Even when the sound on the roof was too heavy. Even when it moved with intention. But in 2012, the excuses stopped working. The lies finally ran out. We learned a truth in the only way you ever learn it. Not through a confession, not through proof, but through a moment so violent and impossible that denial becomes a kind of insanity. We weren't the only ones living in that house. My grandfather's place was out in the country, far from the noise of the city. People called it a villa, but that word makes it sound charming and bright. It wasn't. It was large and old and isolated, sitting on land that looked peaceful during the day and turned strange at night, as if darkness there had a thicker texture. In winter, it was worse. The cold made the building creak and groan. The wind had room to run, and it would slam itself against doors and windows like it was trying to get inside. The nights were long. The silence felt deliberate. That particular night, the air was freezing. The kind of cold that dries out your throat and makes your nose sting. We had spent the day laughing and talking, the way families do when they're trying to convince themselves they're close. I remember thinking, before bed, that the house felt almost normal, warm even. Like maybe whatever had haunted it in the past had finally grown tired and left. I went to sleep with that thought in my head. Sometime later, I woke up and knew instantly that something was wrong. I didn't even need a sound at first. I could feel it in my body, the way you can sense someone standing in a room even before you open your eyes. Then it happened. At exactly 1 a.m., and I know the time because my mother checked it the second we all jolted awake. There was a noise like a bomb going off inside the house. The walls shook. Dust dropped from somewhere above. I heard something rattle in the hallway as if it had been punched. It wasn't an explosion. There was no heat, no smoke, no spreading shock wave. It was one single, violent strike against the hallway door that led to the bedrooms. Not a knock, a hit, like a fist the size of a brick. For a second, everything was frozen. The air, our breath, even the house seemed to hold still after the impact, waiting. My mother sat up so fast her blanket slid to her waist. My aunt, who had been sleeping nearby, lifted her head and stared toward the hallway. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. We looked at each other in the dim light, and I saw it on their faces, raw and immediate. Fear that had nothing to do with imagination. It was the kind of fear you see in animals right before they run. And that was when I understood something I had never understood as a child. They weren't making excuses because they didn't believe in what was happening. They were making excuses because they did. The door shook again, a smaller tremor, like whatever hit it had shifted its weight. The handle didn't rattle the way it would if a person were trying to open it. This wasn't someone testing the lock. This was something letting us know it could break through if it wanted to. My mother stood up, moving too quickly for someone who had just been asleep. My aunt grabbed her phone, more out of habit than hope. There was no signal in parts of that property. Even if there was, what would you say? Someone is hitting the door from the hallway. Someone is on the roof. Come quick. Something that isn't human is trying to get in. My grandfather slept in another part of the house. My grandmother, too. The older generation always slept like they were alone, like they had earned the right to ignore the night. We could have screamed for them, but there was a terrible logic to our silence. Something about making noise felt dangerous, like it might attract attention. Instead, we did the one thing that made sense. We opened the wooden door that led into the courtyard. Cold air rushed in immediately, sharp and biting. Outside there was no moon. The courtyard was a block of darkness, so complete it didn't feel natural, as if the night had thickened into a solid thing. The trees at the edge of the property were black shapes without detail. The shadows between them looked deep enough to hide bodies. My aunt stepped forward first. Even now, that bravery unsettles me because I don't think it came from confidence. I think it came from desperation. She wanted so badly for it to be something simple. A thief, an animal, anything with a normal explanation, that she was willing to walk into darkness to prove it. She scanned the courtyard, calling out once, her voice low and strained. No answer, no movement, not even the sound of a startled cat. My mother stood close to the bathroom outside, placing herself between me and the deepest dark. She kept her hand on my shoulder. Her grip was tight enough to hurt. Not because she wanted to hurt me, but because holding on to me was the only thing making her feel like she still had control over something. We searched with our eyes, then with a weak light from a phone, sweeping it across the ground, the walls, the corners where someone could hide. There was nothing. No footprints, no disturbed gravel, no broken lock. No sign anyone had been there at all, and somehow that was worse, because if it had been a person, there would have been evidence. There would have been a reason. We could have called someone. We could have shouted. We could have done something. Instead, we were left with the same emptiness we always found after the sounds, an emptiness that made the noises feel impossible, and therefore unstoppable. Eventually, with numb hands and stiff fingers from the cold, we went back inside and shut the door behind us. For a few minutes, everything stayed quiet. We returned to our beds, but nobody truly lay down the way you do when you expect sleep. We lowered ourselves slowly, carefully, like the mattresses might be traps. I remember the sound of fabric rustling, too loud in the silence, and the way my mother's breathing didn't settle. We put our heads back on our pillows, and then the hallway door shook again. This time, it wasn't like a bomb. It was worse in a different way. It was a direct, heavy slam that sent a vibration through the floor. I felt it up into my jaw. I felt it behind my eyes. It wasn't just sound. It was force. My mother's lips began moving immediately. She started whispering Quranic verses under her breath, fast and urgent, like she was trying to build protection out of words. Her voice shook. Her breath came in short gasps. She wasn't performing faith for us. She was clinging to it like it was the only rope left. My aunt's face had gone pale, almost gray in the dim light. Her eyes stayed locked on the door. Then she whispered, as if saying it softly could make it true. "It's just cats." But the words didn't land. Not even she believed them. No cat has the weight of a man. And whatever was out there moved like it understood that we could hear the difference. That winter night wasn't the end. It was the moment everything changed because it took away the last comfortable illusion. After that, every strange sound in that house had meaning. Every creak wasn't just a creak. Every shift in the roof wasn't just wind. Once you know something is real, you can't unknow it. Months later, in summer, the villa filled with relatives for a wedding. Big family events always made the house feel safer. Too many voices, too much laughter, light everywhere. The older women cooking, the kids running in and out, doors constantly opening and closing. For a while, the place felt like it couldn't possibly hold anything dark. There were so many people that some of us slept outside in the courtyard. We laid blankets on the ground and tried to make it an adventure, like camping. Above us was a corrugated iron roof that covered part of the courtyard, meant to provide shade during the day. At night, it trapped sound. I remember lying there listening to the soft noises of everyone settling down. Someone coughing. Someone turning over. A distant laugh that faded. The air was warm, but the metal above us felt like a lid. I'd almost fallen asleep when the roof moved. Not a gentle scrape, not the pop of metal cooling, a heavy impact directly above our heads. Thud. The iron sheet buckled slightly, then settled back. The sound traveled through the entire roof like a shiver. People around me went still. I heard someone whisper, "Did you hear that?" Then it happened again. Thud. This time the impact was followed by a second, like a rhythm. Thud. Thud. Not random, not uneven, deliberate. Something was jumping on the roof. Not walking, not scurrying, jumping. Each impact sent a vibration down through the metal, into the air, into our bodies. It made my stomach clench. The sound had weight behind it, the way a heavy person landing hard has weight. And it wasn't moving like an animal panicking. It wasn't running away. It wasn't searching for a way off. It was staying above us. It was repeating the motion, like it wanted us to understand. I am here. People started whispering prayers. Someone sat up and turned on a phone light, shining it uselessly at the roof as if light could travel through metal. A few of the men stood, looking around the courtyard, trying to spot a shadow climbing down. But the roof was too high. The edges were too dark. The sound came from right above the center, where you couldn't see anything from below. Thud, thud, thud. It went on long enough that time warped. Minutes felt like hours. Every pause filled us with hope, and every new impact crushed it. Eventually it stopped, and the silence afterward was so loud it felt like pressure. No one slept properly after that. Even if your eyes closed, your body stayed alert, waiting for the next impact, waiting for the roof to give in, waiting for something to drop down into the courtyard with you. When morning came, people tried to laugh it off the way families always do when something terrifies them. Someone joked that a cat must have gotten trapped up there. Someone blamed the wind. But by then, the older women weren't laughing. My aunt looked like she hadn't slept at all. My mother's face was tight and drawn. The truth was sitting between them, heavy and unspoken, and I could tell they were tired of carrying it alone. That was the morning the story finally cracked open. Someone, one of the older relatives, I can't even remember who, started talking about the land. Not casually, like they'd been holding it back for years and didn't want to anymore. The villa wasn't just an old house on quiet land. It had been built directly over ruins. Back in the colonial era, when the French had a military presence in the region, there had been a hospital there. Not the kind of hospital you picture with clean sheets and careful nurses. A military hospital. A place where men were brought after battles, injured and sick, and many of them didn't leave. They were brought there to die. The ground under the house had soaked up that kind of suffering, over and over, year after year. Pain doesn't disappear just because time passes. People like to think it does because it's easier. But some places hold on to it. Some places feel like they remember. When I heard that, something in my chest went cold. It didn't explain everything, not in a logical way, but it made the house feel different. Like it wasn't haunted by one thing. Like it was just standing on top of an old wound that never fully closed. That's when my aunt finally stopped pretending. She admitted things she had never said out loud, not even to my mother. She told us about the bathroom door that would lock itself from the inside when no one was in there. Not once, not twice, but enough times that she stopped using that bathroom at night. She'd stand outside it, with her hand on the knob, arguing with herself, trying to convince herself it was a faulty lock, until she gave up and walked away. She told us about waking up one night and seeing a woman sitting on the edge of her bed. A blonde-haired woman. Not someone from our family. Not someone who could have been visiting. Someone pale, almost glowing in the dark, with eyes that looked empty. The woman didn't speak. She just stared, calm and unblinking, like she'd been waiting for my aunt to wake up. My aunt said she couldn't move at first. She thought maybe she was dreaming, or half asleep, or having one of those moments where your mind makes shapes out of darkness. But the longer she stared, the more real the woman became. The room didn't feel like a dream. It felt sharp. Then the woman was gone. Not like someone getting up and walking away. Gone, as if the air had simply decided to stop holding her shape. My aunt also told us about the bedroom doors that would jam shut out of nowhere, trapping family members inside. People would pull and pull, shouting, swearing the door was stuck, while others on the outside tried to force it open. They would panic, the trapped person screaming, the people outside yelling back, until suddenly the door would swing open with no resistance at all, like it had never been stuck. The way she described it, it didn't sound like old wood swelling with humidity. It sounded like something choosing when to let people out. While she talked, my mother didn't interrupt. She didn't deny it. She just sat there, fingers twisted together, lips pressed tight. I realized she had her own stories, too. Stories she buried so deep she could pretend they weren't there as long as she didn't say them aloud. That was when I finally understood why they had lied for so long. They weren't trying to protect us from a spooky story. They were trying to protect us from the idea that something could live in your home with you, something you couldn't see, something you couldn't reason with, and there would be nothing you could do about it. Because once you accept that, you start questioning everything. Every shadow. Every quiet night. Every time you feel watched when you're alone. My grandparents still refused to leave that villa. It was their first home. They built their life there. They raised children there. They buried loved ones while living there. To them, leaving would feel like losing a part of themselves. And in a strange way, I think they've made peace with whatever shares the space. Not friendship, not acceptance. Just the tired agreement of people who have lived beside something for so long that fear becomes routine. but I never made peace with it. Even now, years later, I still hear that corrugated iron roof in my dreams, shaking above me with heavy, steady impacts. I still feel that vibration in my body, the sense of something directly overhead, something with weight and intention. Some houses are built from stone and wood. That one was built on top of a graveyard, even if nobody wanted to call it that. And once a place like that knows you're there, once it learns the sound of your breathing and the rhythm of your sleep, it doesn't always let you forget it.